Welcome to Giving You More Than Numbers, CASS's business support podcast, your go-to resource for practical business advice and expert insights.
Hello, and welcome to CASS's podcast, Giving You More Than Numbers, where we give you small, practical advice on actually improving how your business operates. Today, our topic is all about cash flow and how that is so important at the centre of your business. And today I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Paul McKay from Xero and Louise McCabe, who is the owner of accounting firm Angel Accounting based in Alcester.
Hi there.
Good afternoon. As I say, Louise, thank you for joining us. If you could tell us a little bit about you, your background, and a little bit about Angel Accounting.
Indeed. So I'm Louise, the owner, the lady with the grey hair at Angel Accounting. I've run the business for 30 years now, and I have a little secret to let you into. I'm not really an accountant. I'm actually a former corporate banker. But don't worry, I have been rehabilitated back into society, having seen the error of my ways. I come from a small business background. My father always ran his own firm, and looking after small businesses is my passion in life, basically because I learned a lot in banking. Once upon a time, your bank manager was your best friend to help you when you ran a business. They don't exist anymore. So now that's what we try to do at Angel Accounting, be your friend in business.
Brilliant. Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, afternoon. My name is Paul McKay. I'm part of the Xero team in the UK. I've been at Xero for about 8 years. I've been working with accountants and bookkeepers up and down the country for about 18 years. So I've been doing this quite a while. Yeah, lucky me, I get to work with amazing practices like Paul and Louise day in, day out, really helping them and their clients digitise.
But you don't have grey hair.
Well, don't look too close. I have no hair.
Right, let's pull this away from hair. There's too much hair going on in this today. I think that obviously we've said that the idea of today is all about cash flow. It is the absolute heart of every business. Without cash flow, you cannot succeed, you can't grow. And understanding that cash flow is probably the most paramount part of running a business. So I think if we have a little look at one of the first parts in terms of cash flow is that health check. It's that ability to understand what my cash position is. And before we can understand it, let's have a little delve into experiences of how do you identify cash flow problems in the first instance?
Well, when you look at figures, everybody, it's a very old adage, and it's a little bit naff to say it, but turnover is vanity, profit is sanity. But actually, without a business, you're not there. Cash is always king, and cash is what allows you to do things. Now, if only I could always do what I say in practice, because you get tied up in business and you get running ahead with what's going on. And it's so easy to lose sight of the fact that cash is what you need to be able to drive forward and be able to do what you need to do in business. Pressure signs come there. Clients don't pay you as quickly as they should be paying you. You can't meet payments, or every owner of a business has felt that position where they've had to put their own money into the business at the end of the month to make sure that the staff are paid, because we all know that we pay our staff before we pay us. I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying that's what happens. And that's when we realise that actually we need to be on top of where we are with our cash flow.
Yeah, I think some of the early signs that we see is that customer that always pays you on time and then suddenly it doesn't arrive. They avoid your phone calls. They asking for copy invoices. So from a cash flow in, which is always the driver then to be able to pay out, that's our first early sign. The direct debits cancelled, the payments that have always been on time suddenly become 14 days late, then 21 days, and before you know where you are. But I think most business owners will look to pay staff and suppliers first, and then some of probably the most important people to stay friendly with, our friends at HMRC, they tend to be the ones that get left behind. And whilst that in some circumstances can be negotiated, it's the one area that there isn't a lot of tolerance.
Well, they're the easiest one not to pay because historically HMRC haven't been on the ball, but unfortunately they're the ones with the strongest teeth at the moment, and they're the ones that come to really cause you headaches, which I'll tell you about a little bit later.
Oh no, we don't want headaches. So before we kind of look at how we can mitigate that, and I know that that's sort of where Xero are really front and centre. If we look at two different scenarios, so we're very much digital. I know Louise is on that digital transformation. So what is your process for reviewing somebody's cash flow position, and how do you help clients understand that sometimes money in the bank isn't their true cash position?
It's very difficult because you don't wish to be preaching at people all of the time. And they say you can take a horse to water and you can't make it drink, even if you put its head under the waterline. If it doesn't want to drink, it won't drink. All you can do is encourage people to look at the data that's available, or more importantly, share with me the data that they've got so that I can at least extract it and find out the position for it. Not be embarrassed if the position isn't how you'd like it to be. It's far better to try to fight the fire early and actually have the massive blaze to have to put out a bit further down the line. We're all in it together.
Absolutely. Paul, is there any sort of bits that you picked up going and working with other accountancy firms that we see ways, probably more in a digital sphere for you, that business owners get the support from an accountant to help them understand that cash flow?
Yeah, so we're huge advocates with cash flow and having and reducing debtor days. We're actually at the Houses of Parliament monthly at the moment. We go down there, all our senior leadership team, and we're all about getting small businesses paid on time. So it's a huge focus for us in the UK, and it's something we preach to all our partners at the same time. So what we're trying to do is support the UK, the partners, small businesses, direct to government, but also we're supporting clients directly and partners. So we've done that in a number of formats, whether it's online tools or parts of our products itself, but we're doing it in a number of different angles. But yeah, different partners have different stories around cash flow management with their clients.
I think when I was a bank manager, when people used to come for a loan or an application, the first thing you'd say to them is to produce a cash flow. And they'd toddle off to their accountant, produce this cash flow, which came in a lovely binder, and you looked at it and went, that's great. And it never saw the light of day again. And I am a strong advocate in the fact that a cash flow should actually be a working document, preferably with tea and coffee stains all over it to prove that it's been utilised. The back of a fag packet is acceptable. It doesn't actually have to be a fancy Excel spreadsheet, but it's a lot easier if you've got everything automated in the cloud and you can put the tools alongside it to extract it faster. You don't need as many fag packets if you do it that way either. But it should be a working document that's looked at least once a week, if not actually once a day. And I've known some clients looking at it several times a day.
Yeah. And that leads us, I suppose, nicely on to this kind of cash flow health check, is how often should we be looking at cash flow? Not only where are we at, but what's that projection of what's coming? But just to pull back one thing in terms of what we do with our clients around the reviewing their cash position, before we even hit cash and we wonder what that impact is, we talk to them about, well, what credit terms are you giving to your customers, and what payment terms are your suppliers actually expecting you to pay? And whilst we're not really into case stories, we had a client that offered his biggest customer 30-day payment terms, but his supplier wanted paying in 7. And all of a sudden he's upside down, and you have this fear, I think, where it's your biggest client and your biggest customer, I'm going to allow that cash flow and those payment terms to be extended because I want the business. Well, actually, it's all right having that turnover. I've done £1 million worth of sales, but the amount of money that you're actually owed is actually significantly, let's say it's £500,000 in terms of debtor book because of your payment terms.
But then you do have to also remember the environment that you're working within. So there are some companies that I work with who their staff have to be paid weekly, the drivers perhaps, but their clients, because of the way the industry goes, are on 60 and 90-day terms. And then cash flow is very, very important because we don't all have that level of money behind the sofa to
That's it.
that.
And we'll talk about some of the tips and the tricks on how we can actually make that work for us a little bit later in the chat. So we spoke about how often should they check.
Yep.
Now, if they're working in a spreadsheet-based environment, it's a little bit harder, a little bit longer. So you probably find people only check it once a week. If we're lucky, predominantly, and in my experience pre-Xero and live environments, it would just perform part of a management reporting pack at the end of a month.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So realistically, I guess our first big tip is have a working document as a cash flow model. If you aren't in the cloud, it needs to be a live Excel spreadsheet. If you are working in the clouds, that tool is already there, and it's about you making odd adjustments to it. And we'll talk about that shortly in the next section of the podcast. Thank you for that. I think that was really insightful, and hopefully you as the viewers have taken a little bit of the type of things that are identifying as cash flow problems. But now let's actually try and become a little bit more proactive. Let's try and see if there are tools available or tools that we can embrace that automate and help us understand our cash position, as opposed to having to plug loads of numbers into a spreadsheet and then realise that formulas don't work, or actually it's already out of date. And I think we're really well placed having Paul here from Xero, because they're one of the forefront leaders in this cloud space of making the tools work in real time. And I think that's the key. So, straight question, Paul, how does Xero help businesses track and improve cash flow?
Sure, and I'll start this off by a bit of... So Xero came to the UK from New Zealand 12 years ago, 13 years ago, so I'm sure someone will correct me on that. And when they came, they were real disruptors in the UK because they introduced a certain feature of linking your bank account straight to our product. And this is where I think we really started to look at real-time visibility and snapshots of your business, where we can actually see what's coming in and going out of your bank at the same time. So that's where Xero's success came from, I'll probably say. But in terms of actually using Xero as a day-to-day tool, if you think you've got your day-to-day transactions coming directly through to Xero, we always serve up a fantastic dashboard to all our users, which anybody with any knowledge, anyone...
don't need to be a finance person to understand
exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You don't need to be that literate in terms of the finance world. Can understand. There's a section there about how much money's come into your business. There's a section there about how much money's gone out of your business, and it'll give you a bar graph of showing, is my money coming in more than what's going out?
Yep.
And that's all they want to see. Am I in a good position? So we really encourage people to look at that daily.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. And I think just to sort of round out the piece on that Xero dashboard, it's in non-finance language, as Paul intimated. We talk about invoices and bills to pay. We don't talk about sales ledgers and purchase ledgers. It's all very non-finance people. So for those of you that are working in that Xero environment and managing everything yourself, you'll find it a lot easier to navigate your way through. So if we know that we've got this lovely dashboard and we can see cash in and cash out, we've got a little section that says, here's my sales invoices. And that gives us a breakdown between total amount that we're owed, but actually in red, it says these are overdue. And that's the first bit for me from a cash flow perspective. I need to have no red overdues. I don't mind red overdues on my bills to pay because I'm in control. But what I am interested in is making sure that those bills, those invoices that are shown in red are as low as possible. I think that would probably be a fair assessment.
Yeah.
And Louise, in terms of that day to day, I know you're on that digital journey with lots of your clients.
Yes.
For those that have made that leap into Xero, and let's caveat this, or equivalents,
Yep.
how have they found that insight in running their business?
One of my clients in particular, who has a heavy requirement to pay labour on a weekly basis, has found it a godsend. It's reduced the amount of funding she has to use via factoring, invoice discounting, because she's got a better feel for it. There isn't a problem with factoring and invoice discounting. It just can be quite addictive if you don't control what you're utilising. And she's been able to use her reports on Xero to get a fuller understanding of what she really does need, and what, if she just makes a couple of phone calls, can get the money a little bit quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we have this lovely dashboard that's presented when you log into Xero, and it's there by default. You can't bypass it. It's the first thing as a user you will be presented with. And depending on your level of access will depend on what you actually see on that front page. But as business owners, we are giving you access to view everything. And if your accountant that you're working with doesn't give you access to everything, ask the question why. You need to know what's going on in your business. But that's just a little aside. So we spoke about the dashboard, and we've spoken about there's my quick visual. If we dig a little bit deeper, what else can we find that's going to help us manage our cash flow?
Yeah, I should have added before, actually. So depending on the type of user and how you like to work, you're not forced to sit down and log into a computer. Everything is app driven as well. So just to be clear on that, if you are out and about and you do want to see a snapshot of your business, you can do that quite easily through the app as well. But within product itself, we as I say, we're huge advocates in terms of cash flow and reducing debtor days, but we've produced many other tools to help you manage cash flow. And one in particular I'd like to talk about is analytics.
Yep.
So analytics is something we give free on all our products, and it's a forecasting cash flow tool that we give as part of the product, and it will give you 30 days transparency of what's to come. So basically it will look at your invoices, your bills, it will look at what you've historical trends in the past, and it will start to give you predictions of what your cash flow will look like in 30 days.
Yeah.
We do also have the option to go further ahead, so you can go up to 90 days. That's a small add-on to the product, but it's a valued tool.
Yeah, I would agree, and we, for all of our clients, try and push them to spend that extra little bit of money, because that 90-day forecast suddenly identifies the shortfall that is coming. Sometimes 30 days, I'm okay, but that longer term 90 days, which invariably will then take into account a VAT return or a corporation tax payment, you have that insight to identify a little bit earlier. It's a little bit harder if you go, no, 30 days is more than enough. Most businesses, 90 days, we find that's a plan. Anything beyond that is just a projection, and invariably by the time you get there, it's already changed. But 90 days tends to give us the most accurate time period.
And how well does this streamline in with other areas of the app stack that people might be using? I don't know if they're using Go Cardless, perhaps.
Yes. So I think we'll talk about how we can get people paid and how all that feeds in just a little while. I think where we want to be is try and look at, I think, how we can utilize Xero to both speed up getting documentation out to customers, how we can manage those bills coming in to give us that visibility. And then I think we'll naturally go and look at how we can get paid, the methods then that we can use, the automations that are afforded to us when you're using that cloud-based package, and ultimately then talk about some real world wins where they've adopted some of these payment methods.
Okay.
Got a couple of crackers for you.
Sounds
Crackers,
good.
we like crackers. So Louise, you kind of were almost there. Xero, there's some great automation tools, and Paul's alluded to just some for the actual insights, but that ability to get that invoice out to a customer as soon as we've completed the work, or if we're doing repeat work for them that's the same value every week or every month, how can we speed that process up?
Yeah.
And I think that's one that I'm keen to understand how your clients have embraced that, how Xero pitches itself, and then we'll see whether we can find some examples of how that's really transformed businesses.
Certainly personally in-house, most of my clients pay on a monthly direct debit, and we have completely automated 80% of our invoices. So they just happen in the night. I just walk in the morning and they've been sent. I have clients who also have regular recurring work that's done on a daily or a weekly basis, and we've set up similar templates with them. That's reduced the burden of getting the invoices out. And basically during the tax season time as well, so certain tax returns are completed where it's a one-off fee at the end of it. I was able to have a more junior member of staff because it was all set up, and they're sent out by email, and we have this magic pay now button, and that was it. The invoices are paid because the customers do it in one go.
That's it. And I think those repeating invoices are an absolute must for those that are billing out for regular services, regular fees that don't change, but where you do have the need to raise invoices. And I'm going to use a carpet fitter who is a client of ours. And if we just sort of work backwards and talk about a very, very simple workflow, he'll raise his quote in Xero, in his van, or in front of the client on his tablet, and in some cases his phone. The tablet works a bit better because it's a little bit bigger, and we all know what we're like with clumpy fingers. But he'll raise that quote. The quote can be accepted there and then. He can then go off, order his materials, in to do the fitting, raise the invoice in front of the client, and email it to them instantly. And gone are the days of, I didn't get the invoice, because there's a little bit of a history that sits behind one of these invoices that says when it was sent, when it was opened, when it was read, have you chased, have you sent it again because I haven't received it. All of that history suddenly now exists behind that document. So in terms of speeding up invoicing, the fact that we can do it on the go, or we use the phrase on the fly, makes life really, really easy. And those repeating invoices, they're an absolute godsend, because you can raise them even if you have varying quantities, but the amount is fixed. You can still raise that as a repeating invoice, but literally have it as a draft document that you can amend to add in any extras or whatever, and then still approve and send. So we're a massive advocate of that repeating invoice.
I'd say one thing I come across quite a lot when I speak to small businesses is when I ask why they don't use Xero for invoicing, but they use it anyway, and then they've just putting them in manually. I find that crazy. Is they find that they're not aware of how much customization is available with invoicing, because they just think, oh, it's just going to be a generic cloud-generated invoice template that I'm going to send out. I'm going to lose all my branding and all my terms and conditions. But what they don't realise is you can heavily customise these documents, even replicate what they've used historically. So that's fine. But then the second objection I always get is, well, sometimes we send out different types or different styles to different people. It's like, well, that's not a problem as well. You can have different templates and you can have multiple invoice templates. And they're like, all right, one less reason why I shouldn't adopt. But there we go. That's just one thing that came across recently.
Yeah, and I think I've kind of intimated that the carpet fitter client of ours that will raise the quote, etc. Have you got any examples, Louise, where adopting a cloud-based system, Xero, because I know that you're very much down that line, has made a difference to a client's cash flow in the grand scheme? So not necessarily a little part of it, but has affected cash flow massively. And I'm going to hope in a positive way.
Well, I alluded earlier to the client that runs a cleaning company, where she's actually been able to reduce her reliance on external funding.
Yeah.
Because the invoices are raised as the girls go out to do the jobs. It's done automatically. The invoices in the customer's inbox as the job is done, and the ability to have this pay now so that the invoice is paid quicker. It's just been revolutionary for her.
Yeah, and I genuinely think that the quicker we can get those customer invoices out, especially if you've negotiated those payment terms and we can get it right, we're going to get paid before we have to worry about paying against those costs.
And it's the tying it in as well, so that it can be automated against a credit card payment as well. It's not you having to wait for a check to be sent in the old days or someone doing a bank transfer. It's just automatically happening.
Yeah. I think one thing that we haven't touched on, but I think is probably really useful at this point, is to say, probably about 18 months ago, Xero introduced credit limits within your customer record. And what that allows you then to do is, again, if they're starting to fall behind, the next time you try to raise an invoice, the system is going to advise that they are over their credit limit, reaching their credit limit, and actually, do you still want to raise an invoice? And that ties in nicely. If you're one of those businesses that is in perhaps quite a high risk, or your clients that you work with are in high risk areas, and you buy some form of insurance protection, the insurance companies that are protecting or securing your debt will give you a credit limit. And you need to make sure that's then in Xero, because actually anything beyond that is unprotected. So again, just another little thing that Xero introduced that allows us to monitor if clients are falling behind, especially if you are growing and have a finance team, but you're out doing the selling as the business owner and you don't know whether they're still paying or not. It's easy to then refuse that invoice. So we've spoken about understanding our cash position. And we've spoken about how we can really make Xero and cloud-based technology give us those greater insights and help us speed up invoicing. But actually, none of that really gets to the crux of how can I get paid quicker? What tools can I use? And how efficient is that going to make us moving forwards? So let's start then at the very beginning. How can we reduce late payments? How can we reduce them? Whichever of you want to go, how can we reduce them? I really don't mind, because otherwise I'm going to be talking for the whole of this podcast.
I'll go first. Okay. So we use a term a lot internally called frictionless finance, and we're trying to make it as easy as possible to get paid. So we're trying to create as many different options that our users can use to get paid, because we know everybody's different. Some people are out and about, some people are sat behind a desk, some people are invoicing in advance. It's just, they're all very, very different. So what we try and do is just accommodate everybody.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So when we produce a report every year called XSBI, so Xero Small Business Insights.
Really a great read.
It's a great read. Definitely download it on our website. But we produce this every year. Last year, we had some interesting facts around late payments, and we did this big report all about payments, obviously. And research suggests that if a small business is not using a digital cloud platform like Xero or any other, on average...
No, let's stick to Xero, Paul. Let's stick to Xero.
If a small business is not using a digital platform like Xero, typically it's about 54 days getting paid. Okay?
Yep.
That was on average. If a small to medium-sized business is using Xero, but without payments, digital payments, they get paid on average to 24 days. So if you've got a 30-day term...
50% reduction.
50% reduction. If, however, someone is using Xero with a payment provider, they get paid on average 10 days. It was shocking to hear that, and that's something I tell everybody, and I hugely advocate using payment services to get paid quicker. Some people are worried about the fees associated with it, but if you offset that, the minimal fee versus the potential of being late paid, getting paid late,
getting the money in
is far more important than waiting, crossing your fingers for it to come in by itself. So that's a bit about the research that we've done. But what we've now tried to do within Xero, or what we have achieved, is as a bare minimum, if you're invoicing through Xero, we've had a feature for years, and it just allows you to put a pay now button on the invoice that you send out. It's a digital invoice that gets sent out, and that pay now button is the most prominent part. Big,
bright
massive green button, pay now.
And it works.
It does. It does. If you think about you receiving that, and you just want one less piece of admin on your desk, 9 out of 10 times you're going to click it and get rid of it.
Yeah.
Sorted. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Those envelopes are yet to open with all the bills are probably going to get put to one side. So as a bare minimum, pay now button is something we always say that should use. We've now started to expand that now. So we understand there's different scenarios where you might want to get paid. So where that might not be possible or time's an issue, we now create something called payment links. So we've a tradesperson who's stood in front of their client. They just quoted for a landscape gardening and they haven't got time to populate a huge invoice.
Yeah.
They could just quickly send over a payment link to that client, sat right in front of them. They will receive a prompt, pay here, pay now. They will pay the bill. And then in the background, an invoice gets automatically generated.
And emailed back to them, doesn't it?
And emailed directly to that customer. Even the 2 other ones that we've just recently launched are tap to pay.
That's massive.
So gone are the days now where you need a payment terminal or something on the desk. You can actually use your mobile phone to receive payments for work that you're doing. And again, you receive the payment and then the invoice is generated in the background.
And how simple is the tap to pay to use?
It's incredibly easy to use and it works across iOS and Android as well. But when you come to set up your payments within the Xero menus, there's a full step-by-step guide on how to set it up. The final one that has just been introduced is probably more of a industry trend that's becoming more popular with certain industries really, is using Klarna. So actually you can set up Klarna through Xero as well, and customers have got the option to pay via Klarna. So we're trying to
that is new off. That is pretty new. Pretty new. Fantastic.
Are there any restrictions on the industry sections that can use Klarna?
No, not at all. So my recommendation for anyone. So again, thanks for the prompt. Whenever anybody sets up Xero, we just recommend set up all your payment providers. So we set up to something like Stripe, Go Cardless, PayPal account, Klarna. Yep. And then when you come to create an invoice, you can choose how to receive that payment.
Yeah. I think we've learned that the more payment options you give somebody, the more likely they're going to have one of those options. Because sometimes if you're billing out to a business, you may not have the credit cards, but the payment link or the ability to trigger the Klarna mail and who wouldn't want something like Klarna? Yes, there's a little bit of a fee, but again, I'm spreading from the purchase, I'm spreading my cost a little bit.
Exactly.
I think whilst we're talking about actually how can I reduce late payments, I think it's really important to say, depending on the industry you work in and the industry you're supplying, don't be frightened to apply the Late Payments of Commercial Debts Act. Sounds very complex, but that allows you to levy a late payment charge and statutory interest as dictated by the government to ensure that you get compensated where you're being paid late. And the number of people that are scared to do that because they might lose the client, but ultimately it's costing you money. Yeah. Either in overdraft fees or borrowing charges because you've got to take a loan out or you can't pay your own credit card off. It makes sense to try and recover these. Yeah. If that's just a prompt that gets you paid, you then may choose to credit those charges again, but please don't be frightened to levy them because it's all about making sure we are receiving more than we're paying out. So I think you touched on a couple, Paul. Klarna, I think, is quite straightforward. Someone can spread the costs over a couple of months. Stripe / payment links, instant cards, payment.
True.
Go Cardless and other equivalents. Adfin is another one that comes to mind.
And Go Cardless allow you to spread it over a period now as well.
But I just wanted to talk about that direct debit piece. So if you can and do lots of work regularly for clients, try and encourage that direct debit piece because, again, it will collect the money on the due date. So even if you do give a client 30 days credit, on the 30th day, it's going to start the direct debit collection process. Yeah. So it just mitigates that late payment issue again.
I've got a great story just from today, hot off the press for that actually. So on my way down, I had an email last night about a boiler that I had fitted a year ago. The same company emailed me last night saying, we see you had it a year. We'd like to arrange a service or speak to you about some service plans that we've got. While I was in the car driving down today, I asked a question like, obviously, I actually found out they use Xero anyway, just through talking to them. While I was sat in the car, I managed to set up a direct debit, and so I'm only paying them £9 a month via Go Cardless.
Yeah.
I did it all while I was in the car, absolutely superb, and now I've got a service plan on my boiler.
Fantastic. And your supplier, so you as the customer, but them as the supplier are happy. They're getting the money regularly. Cool. No late payment fees.
And I've had all the emails through and confirmation already. I didn't even have to log into my.
That's it. It is. I think the more payment options we have, the quicker we get paid, the quicker we improve our cash position.
But if you're a regular user of Go Cardless as well, and I'm asking this on a personal basis more than anything else, the platform isn't always that user friendly for working out when these direct debits are going to be coming in. Okay. Is that something you're saying that Xero extracts from the system to put in a cash flow, or have I got to put an extra step in?
So it's all driven by due dates.
Yeah. Is it?
It's all driven by your due date. So the way that any payment tool, so your Klarna potentially, although we from a customer, the supplier perspective, will get the full payout, it's the customer that's paying over 3. On the Go Cardless piece, because it's driven by due date and plus you usually get payout 2 days after they've collected it, as long as within Analytics Plus, and we're getting a little bit technical here, as long as in Analytics Plus we connect the Go Cardless intermediary account, that is included then in your balances. That's the key, is don't just connect on Analytics Plus the only bank account you've got. Make sure that your credit card is connected. Make sure that your payment partner accounts, whether that's a Stripe, because those are cash that sit in your business that can be used for managing when that cash flow happens.
Right.
So yeah, it's just about, again, that little bit of configuration to make it work. And I think just because it's come to mind, if you are going to use the Analytics Plus feature in Xero and want and know that you've got exceptional payments or receipts that are coming in, so if you've got a corporation tax payment, or you have some investment coming in, or you have sold a vehicle and you're getting that cash coming in, whilst Analytics Plus will look at what's happened in the last 3 months and then try and predict what's going to happen for the next 3 months, you can still go in and put in these one-off exceptional monies in, monies out, and that will naturally affect your cash flow position. And we use that immensely because we've got a flat guaranteed repeating income, which automatically pulls through. But when we get one-off jobs and one-off bits of work that come in, we want to factor that in because we know we'll be completed and we'll know we'll get paid, but the system's not predicting that until the point that you raise your invoice. And then if you've raised your invoice, you can go back into Analytics Plus and actually remove your manual entry. So it's your Excel spreadsheet, but in a live environment that is constantly updating.
It's a very hyper Excel spreadsheet.
It is. So we've spoken now about quite a lot about how we get paid. Can we think about and help the viewer and listener look at how we can manage the payment of our expenses? So that might just be through Xero or some of the tools that integrate with Xero that help us capture and manage cash flow. And then we'll talk about some tips that we can do around our own spending to improve cash flow.
Okay, I'll go first on that.
Yeah,
okay. So we tried to keep the whole workflow within Xero. There are other tools available in the marketplace. But to start it all off, really, we have a product called HubDoc that connects up to Xero. HubDoc allows you to capture invoices and receipts on the go. The idea is just that you're not losing documents, and to capture it, get it into Xero and let the technology, the OCR technology, actually read the content of that document and get it into Xero, and so that you're tracking it and taking account for it, I suppose, really. So once the documents are in, it'll be able to track what their due dates are, the values, etc., and that will then follow on to things like analytics, so you can then start to forecast when you are supposed to pay those bills. To assist that, we have Xero the ability to pay bills directly from Xero using a third-party tool called Cresco. Most of our products include the option to do free payments within Xero, a couple of months, or I think it's 5 in Grow, 10 in Comprehensive, and 15 in Ultimate. So you're allowed to make payments directly from Xero free of charge. You can do individual ones, you can do batch payments, but the idea is we're just trying to make it a two-way thing. So not only do we want you to get paid quicker, but make this a fair thing and pay your bills at the same time.
Fabulous. And I think we talk about, so that's, if you like, managing our day-to-day bills. Let's just think about those businesses that are slightly bigger that might be out and about on the road.
That's always a nightmare.
How can we help those businesses capture those tools beyond a Hub Doc, which is an evolving tool? I think that's probably the right phrase. But Xero has a really clever feature built in that actually allows us to track individual expenses that people are incurring. And then somebody from a business owner perspective has the ability to go, yes, we'll pay that. Or actually, no, you're not having that Walt Disney shop purchase. Or as we saw yesterday, someone's been into Birmingham to the Disney store and tried to say that was a gift for a client. The fact it was his daughter's birthday is another another conversation entirely. But yeah, I think it's that. How can we help business owners control and capture that ancillary spend, I think is the phrase, so rather than just bills.
We were very creative when we looked at that space. So we got part of our product called Xero Expenses. So Xero Expenses does exactly what you
was your focus group for that now?
It took us a while. But it's exactly for what you've mentioned, Paul, really. So recording and capturing expenses on the go. If it's just a business owner point of view, great. It just allows you to record it. If you have staff, even better, so you can track, approve, do things like mileage as well. But that's exactly what that's for. Allows you to monitor it so that we're spending in the right places, I suppose, really.
Brilliant. So we have those, but then let's just think about, we've got ourselves into a little bit of a cash flow challenge. We haven't quite enacted everything that we need to do from a getting paid perspective. So from I've got to pay my suppliers, are there any tips and tricks that we potentially have got to just help us extend those payment terms, other than just a nice phone call to our supplier asking for time to pay?
They're asking for a copy of the invoice, perhaps.
No, let's assume that we're wanting to be above board, but actually are there things we can manage internally, or some clever tips and tricks that allow us to navigate some shortfalls, let's call it?
Are we talking about using external funding to help us do that? Or
so we're just, if you like, we're just going to put out there some of the tips and tricks that in our profession we have either seen happen or that we advise people explore, just to help navigate those short-term cash flow challenges.
Yeah, I mean, there are various things that you can use. If you use a credit card and swipe things like that, then your credit card provider will allow you to have an extension of funds in advance, and that ties in with your Xero or your other platform. Short-term lending is always expensive, but if you have to use it has to be the case that it has to be used. It's far better to have managed things so that you're not facing that immediate requirement. I think
you're right. But we want to try and be as proactive as we can and not get stuck into those. So we know what we're going to do. One of the things that, and I think you touched on it, but I want to kind of emphasize, we try and encourage clients where they've got, I'm going to call it cash upfront spending to service a job, but they're not going to be paid for 14, 28 days. Yeah. We try and encourage them to actually move their spending from a debit card, which is instant spend and instantly out your bank, onto a credit card. Because it delays that payment term either beyond when you get paid, or at least shortens the gap. But we always caveat, if you're going to do that, pay that card off in full and its due date. But that massively helps with that cash flow where you are businesses that have to go and buy. And I'm probably thinking more about trades that have to go to the
fix and all of the other
exactly. And if you're not big enough or established enough to have an account, there's always that shortfall. So again, that's just a little tip for us.
You do have to be careful though, because that can get out of control. We've seen that get out of control on many occasions.
Yeah. But it's just trying to think about how can we help in the short term. It isn't a long-term solution. And I think that's really, I think we've already all intimated that it's about, can I get paid quicker? But where we can't get paid quicker, how can we just help mitigate some of those cash challenges? Ask them if they take Klarna. There's a quick win.
Even actually speak to your advisor.
Yeah, that's it. Speak to your trusted Louise.
Auntie Louise.
and so we're now getting everything into Xero. We've now implemented to be paid via all of the pay now methods, and we know what we're trying to do around payment. How can we then use the visibility of bills and expenses that are due to be paid out of Xero to improve decision making? So how can we now use Xero to help us understand when we can pay and how we can pay?
So one thing I saw yesterday, sorry, Louise, is we Xero made an acquisition just before Christmas for a product called Sift, which is in our industry, it's quite a very successful forecasting and cash flow tool. So we're heavily invested in this space because we really believe it's how we can help small, medium-sized businesses in the UK. But one particular tool that's within there is there's a cash manager, and you can actually see it by calendar view. And I've never seen anything like that before, and I thought it was fantastic. So tools like that, I feel, be fantastic. Or you could almost pinpoint a day that you need to make that investment, or you need to do an outlay for something. That's just a small tip from me.
Yeah.
Well, I always think your finance, the figures tell you everything, and it's a bit like driving a car. Your historic data is like looking in the rearview mirror where you've been, but actually you can use your figures to work out where you want to go to. So suddenly the windscreen has become clearer, and you can using that data, you can set your plan for where you want to take your business.
Yeah, I think all of that is absolutely valued, and potentially just a little tip from us is we would always look at, when it comes to making those, I'm going to call them bill payments rather than generic payments, because like we intimated at the very start, we always want to pay staff. We want to pay the staff first, not necessarily ourselves, but we want to pay our staff. So we would always look at, very, very simply, what's in the bank, add in what I know I can hang my hat on is going to be paid, and then take off what I know I can't get away without paying. And it's just that little bit, those three, and they're all on the dashboard: bank balance, invoices due, and bills I've got to pay. All three of them, quick bit of maths. Now, whilst that's not a rocket science, it's not an exact science, because we may still have payroll commitments to meet, government commitments to meet. It's that ability using those three to go, okay, I'm okay. My cash is okay. But we get a little bit technical, and we can't get away from it for this. If you run your balance sheet report out of Xero, now whilst it's loads of numbers on a page, I would always point you to 3 lines. Assets, as in current assets, and it clearly says, because that's what I can quickly turn into cash. Current liabilities, because that's what I've got in the immediate time frame. And then the very bottom number, the equity that's still available, because that takes into account of your long term. So when it comes to those strategic decisions, should I buy? Can I buy? When can I buy? Those 3 lines give you a really good insight into, is it the right time to do it? So those, I think, all help with that decision making. So we spent the last hour or so just talking about all of the bits that we can do to improve cash flow. But if you've not caught those 3 previous podcasts, I think if we round it all out and pitch some really simple roundups, I think actually we should leave the viewer and listener with lots of things to go away and either implement or challenge their current advisors to help them put into action. Let's go right back to the start. What are the easy wins for a business looking to improve cash flow in the short term. So let's not think about what they're going to do in 6 months' time. What would we suggest they do to improve cash flow now and for the next month or two?
They've definitely got to automate their invoicing.
Okay.
That's where it starts, with the automation of invoicing, and couple that with automating how those invoices are then paid.
Yes.
By the 80-20 rule.
Yeah. So if we can get 80% of our invoices paid automatically, so that's you go cardless or your Cresco, and actually those that won't, the direct debit, whether it's a fixed amount or even variables, can we then talk about pushing them to please pay now, please pay now. And can we make that button even bigger?
With arrows.
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, anything sort of around that whole cash flow?
Complete agreement with Louise. I just say all about the payments, get them turned on, the free to set up, they're easy to set up, and for every time you raise an invoice or speak to a customer, you can choose how you get paid. Just get it set up straight away.
Yeah. No excuses to not. And I think gone are the days of, I didn't know I can do that, or I haven't got a card machine. I think it's this embrace that it is all within one space now.
Setting the templates up seems scary, but it's the best hour I spent.
Yeah. I mean, we've done it where we've customized the Xero ones, but we've actually taken those templates outside of Xero. And I'm going to name drop in a supposed bad way. They've moved from Sage. They love the Sage template. So we've taken the Xero template outside, converted it to look identical to their Sage invoice for whatever reasons we do not know, and then imported that back in. So actually from a customer's perspective, nothing has changed apart from you've now got pay now buttons, pay by this, Klarna. We've got all of those now in. And I think the other win for me would be, if you're not tied into contracts, is look at your payment terms that you are offering to customers. Because if we're doing 30 days to customers but 30 days to suppliers, you're the wrong. You're actually giving yourself a bit of pressure, because your supplier is not going to say, "Oh, I'll wait for you till your customer's paid." So if we can pivot that and maybe extend supplier payment terms by even a few days or a week, and bring and rein our customer payment terms in. And even if you can't move your existing client bank, when you secure new clients, their payment terms become shorter. So at least, and those are quick wins. And a new customer does not know what your payment terms would be or ordinarily.
And get your customers on a recurring monthly fee. That's by far
it is, and that's just industry specific, isn't it? Your landscape gardener just wants to pay, and he don't care how he gets paid, but we want to get that kind of instant turnaround. We touched on an app stack earlier, and we've got loads. They're still part of an app stack, but they're inside Xero's own direct ecosystem of apps. But actually, if those aren't right for you, what other sort of app integrations can really add value, both on the invoicing customer side, but potentially managing those expenses on the outward track?
So we have a app store, similar to what you'd experience with like Apple or Android app store. It grows daily, so we have almost 1,200 apps in there now, and there's a lot. It's overwhelming, but what I would say is definitely explore it, because they are all categorized by either a function or an industry. So you'd be very interested for a business owner to go and search by their industry and see what else can support them, as well as Xero. So there's all sorts there to go at. But in terms of what we're talking about today, there's a lot. So we do offer the majority of what you'll need on Xero itself, but sometimes you might need a bit more, a bit more complexity, a bit more industry specific, etc. But there's tons, and I can't really probably name drop.
No, you can't. But I think if we pick up one, I'm just going to pick up one app that we work with our clients primarily, and it's a piece of software called Chaser. So there's a plug for Chaser, and while Xero has automatic invoice reminders that you can configure, and again, if you're not using them, have a look at using them. You can have up to 5 chasers. We always turn the first one into a reminder that your invoice is due in 5 days, and then we have 4 that chase with slightly different text that get increasingly severe to the point of the last one being, please pay us or you're going legal, or we're going legal. But Chaser actually takes that an extra layer further, and with the advent of AI starts to make it a little bit more closely aligned to human intervention.
It's a credit controller, isn't it?
It is in essence. So it's just another way of embracing a tool that integrates seamlessly with Xero. So if you paid an invoice off in Xero, it disappears out of Chaser, and that's where Xero is really at the forefront of working with other apps, because it's not precious about sharing its back engine with other tools, as long as they add value to the user. So yeah, that ability with the app stack, I think it is go and explore. There are not millions, but there are thousands out there that ultimately will find something that either allows you to do invoicing if you're a project manager, where Xero maybe doesn't fit all of the bits you need, but it will do the invoicing for you and automate that piece down to Xero. So yeah, don't be frightened if you think Xero might not be right for you. There will be a tool that will talk to Xero to give you the front end controls that you need, but Xero with its functionality will give you all of the output around cash management and all of those bits. And I think just to kind of round out those practical bits of advice, and we'll let this roll as long as we need to. But what's the very first thing you would ask a client to consider when they have cash flow challenges? So we've just pivoted slightly from the pre-warned question to something that, because we've covered off the what would we automate first. So let's just...
The earlier you seek advice, the better.
Yeah.
It's confidential. Talk to your professional, trusted advisor. We've been there, we've done that, we've probably got the T-shirt. We know it's difficult to accept, first of all, but there's always a solution if there's enough time to find it.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the keys, is don't try and bury your head in the sand until it's a little bit too late.
Yeah. I mean, I took a phone call this morning from somebody who's been locked out of premises because a bill hadn't been paid. And I'm running around like a headless chicken now for them, sorting out how to get them back in. Yeah. That could have been dealt with a lot easier 3 weeks ago.
Head in the sand scenario. Paul, is there anything?
Oh, wow, I don't get to experience things like that day to day, unfortunately.
You don't get phone calls that I regularly
Maybe
get
personally, but to that level, unfortunately, I don't get to speak to businesses that close. But I'd say if you have an outstanding debtor ledger and there is a cash flow scenario in place, even if it is within those terms, there's no harm in sending out a reminder with a pay now button, because it might be in front of their computer right now and be prepared to pay that bill for you.
Absolutely. I think the pay now is the absolute minimum we should now be expecting.
Yeah. I think you can also use it to pre-warn yourself for potential future problems as well, because if you've got the customer that's always paid you spot on the nailer, and then suddenly it's a week late, and then it's 2 weeks late, and then they're wanting duplicate invoices, and then it's there's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And your tips and your advice have been extremely well received. But Paul, we're gonna close with a question to each of you. And Paul, if you could give one piece of advice to a business that is struggling with cash flow, what would it be? One piece. I know there's loads, but one.
Payment services, 100%. Yeah. I'm sorry, I've said it several times today. Just have as many payment options as possible open to your clients.
Fabulous. Brilliant. And Louise, obviously you work with, similar to us, hundreds of clients, and with the advent of, or the development, not really the advent, but the development of cloud and primarily Xero, what's the biggest mindset shift that you have seen business owners have when it comes to controlling cash flow?
We live in a real-time environment now, and you need the answer now, not in an hour's time, not in 2 days' time. And by automating all of these systems, that's how you get that answer.
Yeah, fabulous. I think that is that's key. I think that there's very much now I want it instantly.
Yeah.
And tools like Xero will give us that instant insight. And then from an advisor perspective, we can log on, they can log on, and that collaborative way of working that is really key for success suddenly is really, really easy. So that's it for today. Thank you very much to Paul and Louise for sharing many practical insights. Some I think will resonate with lots of you. Some people may not have considered others and go out and implement them. And I think that's what it's all about. What's the one cash flow tip you're going to go and implement from today's session? Hopefully, it's those pay now buttons, instant payment. Don't forget to drop any questions or topics that you'd love us to cover to socials, and we'll be sure to catch you next time. Thanks very much for tuning in.
Thanks for listening to Giving You More Than Numbers. Subscribe for more business insights from Team CASS.